right, everyone. Thank you all for joining our webinar from ideation to release. I'm super excited about this webinar because we're really going outside of some of the normal types of webinars we do. We want to really go behind the scenes and talk with some of our product managers on how we come up with the ideas for some of our features, and then what's the cycle from ideation to release. And this is something that we get asked about a lot. So I'm really excited to showcase that with you all. We've got a really good crowd on the line today. We've got Max Shaw, who leads our product management team, and we've also got Calvin Castellino and Jamie O'Brien, who are product managers in areas like listings, reviews, knowledge graph connectors. We've also got myself, Nick Orapal, and we're going to talk through a number of different items today. On the agenda, we've got ideation. Where do these ideas come from? Max is going to talk about all the different places that ideas come from and how they come to fruition. And then Calvin is going to take us through how do we go through prioritization of these ideas. With so many ideas coming in from so many places, how do we decide what we're actually going to build and when? And then finally, Jamie is going to talk through our development process. So how do we actually take something from an idea to a real product? And then I'll finally close it out with how do we actually release that product and get it to you all on the line and make sure that you're getting all that great value. Finally, we're going to have a Q&A, so definitely stay put till the end, and we're going to have questions with Max, Calvin, and Jamie. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat on Zoom, and we will get to them throughout the course of the webinar if it makes sense, or we'll make sure to get to them at the end. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Max to talk through product and how we come up with some of our ideas.
Thanks, Nick. Awesome. So I want to talk about ideation. How do we come up with the ideas? How do we think about building our product roadmap? Before jumping into that, I wanted to give a quick overview of our team structure. So this is how we break down the product team. Each PM is in charge of a different area of the product. So we have the knowledge graph, listings, reviews, platform, answers, pages, analytics. Those are the different categories. And then we have different PMs or product managers who own those different areas. So on the call today, we have myself, Calvin, and Jamie. Jamie's in charge of the knowledge graph and our connectors framework. Calvin's in charge of listings and reviews. And each of them have teams with them to manage these products. So ideation, where do we come up with the ideas? What do we decide on what we're going to build next? So let's talk a little bit about the different sources of ideas and kind of how we think about what's coming in the future. The first and probably the biggest area we get ideas from are from you, our customers. We want to understand, what do you like about our software? What do you not like about our software? Where are there pain points? Where is there problems that we could help you solve? So this is probably the majority of our requests in our future roadmap. Generally, these come from three main areas. The first is our sales and support teams often will bubble up ideas to us. So they're going to say, hey, this person was struggling with this screen, or this person wanted this feature to do X, Y, Z. And so we hear those requests and kind of add those to our backlog and our roadmap. The second area is obviously direct meetings. My product team joins a bunch of meetings directly with customers or with agencies or with partners. We love hearing feedback about the product, about the things that are working well, and often more importantly, the things that are not working well. So we're constantly listening, and especially joining these meetings. We want to hear from customers, what do they like about the product and what do they not like about the product? And then the third area we hear requests from, and this is new and we're really excited about this, is the ideas board. Nick is going to give a demo at the end of the webinar, but the ideas board is a new place on Hitchhikers where anyone can submit an idea. This can be Yext employees, this can be customers, this can be people who aren't even customers. You just need to have a Hitchhiker account and you can submit ideas and the community will upvote these ideas as well. My team of product managers looks at these idea boards. We obviously update the status so you can see that new KG field for LinkedIn URL that was actually released in a former release. And we look at the most upvoted ideas to help prioritize our roadmap. Anything that's at the top of this board is going to get a lot of attention from my team. So this is a great way to vote on features that you think are valuable. It's also a great way to submit new ideas. If you have an idea that you don't think anyone's brought up before, this is the place to do it. So this is a really exciting upgrade. We released this late last year, and we'll be giving a full demo of this later on. So a huge portion of the roadmap is driven by those customer requests, but that's not the only source of ideas that we think about. Another big area we look at are the leading consumer experiences. A lot of what Yext does is helps customers modernize their digital journey. And we take a lot of inspiration from some of the best customer experiences out there and try to think through how could we bring this customer experience to the masses. So a few examples that I've thought about recently. This first one is Lemonade. Lemonade revolutionized, I think it's mainly home insurance and I think pet insurance and rental insurance. Their main innovation is that instead of kind of a clunky form-based interface, they designed their application with a chat-first interface. I use Lemonade Insurance. It's pretty great. I definitely recommend it if anyone's looking for a insurance option. And I like it a lot because the customer experience is awesome. They've really perfected a chat-like interface. This is really hard to do, but they've really bet their entire company on it. It's been extremely successful. So as we think about the future of digital experiences, we think about things like chat. We look at Lemonade and the success they've had. How could we bring similar types of technology to other companies? Another example, of course, is the leading search engines. So with our Answer search product, a lot of the value is to bring the same search experience you get on leading search engines on your own website. So of course, we look at Google and Bing and DuckDuckGo and Siri and Alexa and see what types of experiences they're delivering. Here's a new local pack that Google's showing of how they made the map a little bit bigger and adjusted the layout for a simple query like coffee near me. So we're always looking at this and using this for inspiration. Another example, this is a company called StatMuse. For any sports fans, it's a really cool website where you can actually ask a natural language question about statistics. So in this example, the search for the most rushing touchdowns ever in a game, they return, it's a natural language question, and they return a response. In this case, it was Alvin Kamara on, it looks like Christmas last year. This was actually one of the inspirations for our Answers product. The ability to ask a natural language question about sports statistics and then get a direct answer, I thought was an amazing experience. And why can't you do that about anything about a business? Another example is Amazon, the leading e-commerce website, huge influence on e-commerce buying behavior. And most, or a lot of retailers or e-commerce vendors are trying to do a lot of what Amazon is doing. So they have a lot of exciting areas around how they do search, how they do recommendations. And that's also something we're definitely thinking about. And then a final one is Airbnb, very much a search first company. They have search front and center on their homepage where you're searching for locations and check-ins and checkouts and guests. I've seen them experiment with all sorts of different homepages. They've had full search bars. They have kind of segmented search bars, which you see here. So we're constantly looking at these leading consumer experiences. We find the ones we like, and we use that to inform the future of kind of what we want to help customers build. The final area that we look at is other enterprise applications. We know that Yext is not the only SaaS application that your company might use. I saw a study from Okta recently. The average company uses about over 100 different SaaS applications, which is pretty insane. And one of the things that we think is really important from a design and a user experience perspective is that our application feels familiar. So one other thing we do is we look at other enterprise applications, see the patterns and trends and how they're designing their interfaces, and often use that for a lot of inspiration. A few recent examples. This is a screenshot, a blurred screenshot of my Slack application. We use Slack here at Yext to communicate. And one of the features they have inside of Slack is this jump to capability, where you can do Command K and then quickly jump to a different screen. We've actually implemented this inside of our platform in a feature called Quick Find. It's basically the same thing where you do Command K and you're able to quickly find where you want to go. This is actually quickly becoming a pretty standard shortcut throughout enterprise applications to increase productivity. We also have a new left navigation that we're going to be rolling out with our spring release. And a lot of this was also influenced by the navigation of Slack. Another example is Notion. Notion is a kind of a wiki style system. It's kind of a competitor with Google Docs. They have a really good design and a really good system. And one of the things that we think about on the knowledge graph side is content entry. And I would say probably Notion has one of the best content editors out there today. And we certainly look at applications like Notion and other document editing applications to get inspiration around how can we make the knowledge graph editing easier. It's often the best places to look for some of these ideas are companies who their whole business is focused around content entry. We can take a lot of their ideas and apply it to our knowledge graph system. One final example is Zapier. Zapier is a really cool application that allows you to connect and automate workflows. And one of our recent products called Connectors allows you to easily ingest data from all sorts of different sources. And we've taken a lot of inspiration from Zapier in the way that they are able to create flows. In our connector system, you can create transforms in a very similar way. So this is the third main area of inspiration, which is other enterprise applications. And this is really critical so that you have a consistent experience as you jump from app to app, and we can kind of pick and choose the best that we see from these different areas. Now, of course, we have our own points of view and we have our own visions of where we think the world is going and where marketing and support is going. And we certainly use that as well. But these are the three main areas that we look for inspiration. So now I'm going to pass it over and we're going to talk a little bit more about prioritization. So Calvin is going to join us now. He runs our listings and reviews product, and he's going to walk through how we prioritize amongst these different ideas.
Hey everyone, let's talk about prioritization. So as Max was talking about, we're going to have a ton of ideas and you're always going to have too many ideas. You're going to have way more ideas than items that you write specs for. You're going to write specs way more than you're going to have stuff built by engineering. So you need to figure out which of those ideas you want to pursue. And here's a framework that will help. So we're going to talk through the RICE framework. This stands for reach, impact, confidence, and effort. And we have this lovely bowl of rice here to really tie it all in. So I'll start with reach. Your goal here is to help as many users as possible. So when you're selecting to work on a new feature or a new page, there's a few things you want to consider. So first is considering things like time and frequency. So how often is the user going to visit that page or use this feature? When they use that feature, how long are they going to spend there? Are they going to use it every day or just use it occasionally? So think, for example, the difference between a page and account settings versus a key workflow, maybe like our review response product. That account settings page, their users only going to visit it maybe once every 6 months, and they'll spend 5 minutes there and tinker with some settings. But that review response workflow, they might spend hours there every single day responding to reviews. So making sure that you consider those. Next is considering your user type. So what are you looking for here? You're looking for users in the UI or more of a developer use case with an API? Is this feature that you're considering going to be used by a single corporate user in an account, or maybe by thousands of franchisee users? So it might have different effects that way. Or is this feature going to be used by existing users or potentially new users who are trying to sign up? Remember, if you're doing something like a free trial flow, not everyone might convert, so that reduces your reach. And then last, consider reusability. If you define a feature that's more of a point solution and it can only be used once, you're going to get that one-time reach, but that's really it. But if you're building something that's generic, it's a good paradigm for the future. You expand your reach because not only will users use it now, but you'll be able to reuse that in the future and expand to future users as well. All right, next we'll talk about impact. So here you're trying to just maximize the impact across users. So one thing to consider here are small annoyance features versus larger company initiatives. So it could be tempting to work just on small projects, for example, just because they're easy to define, you can get them out quickly, and releasing features feels good. But it can also be tempting to work on just large company initiatives. You always want to chase that new shiny thing that your company is focused on. So you want to think about it. Obviously, large company initiatives have big impact. But if someone uses, a specific button every single day, and you can make a minor change to fix that, you can have large impact even on small features. Another important thing here is considering the unit of what you're measuring for impact. So, like, what are you actually trying to accomplish here? Are you trying to save time? Are you trying to bring in new revenue? Are you trying to prevent churn? What is the ROI on this? Making sure that you're, if you're comparing two different projects in terms of impact, you actually have a unit of measurement that makes sense, and you're comparing apples to apples. Then you want to make sure that you're quantifying that on a numeric scale. If you don't have a specific unit, so there isn't a clear one like time savings or new revenue, you can just come up with your own scale to try to compare two projects, but make sure you're thinking about, will it actually impact your users? The next is confidence. So here you want to make sure that you're pursuing projects where you actually know, the impact and the reach and the effort. And we'll talk about effort in a second. If you have no idea any of these numbers, it will be very hard to make an informed decision. So how do we accomplish this? Well, make sure you're using data. So, build dashboards, look at, if you have data in, SQL or Snowflake or Redis or whatever systems your company uses, make sure you're looking at the data to see if, people are actually using different features. You can use platforms like FullStory or Pendo. They'll tell you where users are clicking around. So you can know, are people actually using specific pages? Then you want to look at specific customer data. Will this feature impact customers in only one vertical or only one geography? And you can have more confidence in what your reach is there. This second point, this is very important. I'm going to say it twice in this presentation. Engage your technical teams early. So what we mean by this is make sure you're talking to your engineers and bringing them in, getting estimates on what you're going to build. If you have no confidence in how long it will take to build something, and you propose something to your engineers and they say, oh, that's great, it's going to take us a year to build it, that's probably not a good project to move forward with, and you may have spent a ton of time on it already. So make sure you know that effort up front. And then finally, conduct market research, talk to customers, make sure you're getting feedback from your stakeholders early. This will let you know, how many customers are actually going to reach, will I make impact, and you can make those informed decisions. And then finally, effort. So again, get those estimates early so you know exactly how much time it will take to build something. So it's looping in technical teams, it's looping in stakeholders, so you know exactly how much work is going to go into a given project, and you can make sure that you know the right estimate there. Next is, if an estimate is very large, consider an MVP solution. So you don't want to build the full Super 9000 immediately. You just want to build a small piece of it, get something out there and see if it makes an impact. That's a great way to get a better ROI on your engineering time. And finally, this one's pretty funny, is using what's called the poop out test. And what I mean by this is, let's say you have a project that's going to take you 4 months to complete. Let's say something happens at the company, they change direction, and you can only complete 2 months of that development on that project. If you're only going to get, if you're not going to get half of the value out of it, it probably isn't a good project to pursue. If you don't finish the whole giant thing and you don't get any value out of it, you want to make sure that if the project ends early, are you still going to get value? So are there key milestones? Are there places where you can stop and see, is this project going the right way? Are we making an impact? So to sum it all up, you look at your reach, you look at your impact, you look at your confidence, you divide that by your effort. That gives you a RICE score, and this will allow you to compare multiple projects and prioritize between them. And now I will turn it over to Jamie to talk about the building process.
All right, thank you, Calvin. So I'm going to focus on what it takes to actually build some of these products and features once we've decided that we do want to prioritize them. So the first thing you have to do when you're thinking about building a new feature is continue to do research. So as Max and Calvin talked about, there's definitely research involved in the ideation and the prioritization part of the process. But by the time you're deciding to build something, you should still continue to do a lot of research. So for us, that looks like talking to customers, understanding their current workflows and pain points, understanding the problem space. So is this a Yext specific problem? Is this something that customers have an existing expectation for how it might work? And then we will evaluate similar solutions if applicable. So again, as Max talked about, we do that a lot in the ideation phase. We'd also do that here as we're looking to build something, see if there's anything that exists that works well that we could potentially borrow some ideas from. And then work with other product managers and engineers. So as Calvin hammered home, definitely engaging engineers early, but also engaging the other PMs. We certainly think about our Yext as a platform. So in theory, no feature should be worked on in a silo. So making sure that whatever you're thinking about, you engage the other PMs and see what they kind of think about the idea and if they've had encountered similar requests in the past. And then last is that we definitely need to spend a lot of time in the product. So ultimately, we should be true experts on the problem inside and out before we could possibly propose a solution. Then you need to write a spec. So the spec is pretty much our ultimate deliverable as PMs. It's the document that contains all of the required details and information that we pass on to engineering that would be required to build a feature exactly as designed. So a spec includes everything from an intro to the problem, so anyone who picks it up could understand what you're trying to solve for, your primary goals, description of your approach, enumerated use cases, so everything from what should happen if you click on a specific button or what should load if there's no data to show, user permissions and access controls, international considerations, and everything in between. So I have an example here of a spec that we wrote for our, we call it internally our entity search redesign. We refer to the main screen and knowledge graph as entity search. And we came out with a lot of updates to that screen in the past year. And that all started in a spec. So the spec is ultimately the thing that should contain all of the details of what you want to build. The next step is to design mocks. So this is a really collaborative process between the PM team and the UX team, as well as a lot of our other stakeholders. We definitely start with wireframing things, but ultimately mock should be a pixel perfect representation of what you would expect engineering to design. We do adhere to a product-wide design system and shared component library, which helps us ensure that all of our designs we roll out are familiar to our customers, as well as efficient for engineering to actually build without having to kind of reinvent the wheel every time we want to use a similar looking button. And again, our UX team does take the lead on this, but ultimately we collaborate with them, with engineers and other stakeholders to come up with our mocks. The next thing I want to talk about is user testing. So while I did put it here after the design mock step, user testing really can be done and does happen at any point in the development lifecycle. So we reach out to users, whether that be internal users, customers, power users, new users, and ask them to take a look at our designs and provide feedback. So this could happen during ideation, during the research and spec writing phase, after our first round of mocks are complete. Sometimes we use a live prototype. And sometimes we even do user testing on our existing features that have existed for a really long time that we just want to see kind of how it's going and how we can improve them. And again, some of the personas that we look at when we user test: existing customers, internal Yext employees, occasionally non-users, power users, brand new users, et cetera. So each time we want to user test something, we actually have a specific arm of our UX team that focuses on UX research that we will engage to help us conduct a tailored user test. All right, the next step is to plan with engineering. As Calvin said, in theory, you've been working with engineering the entire time that you have been thinking about proposing a new project. But at this point in the process, once you have a spec, we work with engineering to break it down into parts and estimate how long each part will take. And at this point, these estimates should be pretty concrete and maybe not as hand-wavy as we would have started with. So for example, in that new entity search project that I talked about, that was an enormous project for us in Knowledge Graph, where we were proposing completely redesigning the main screen in Knowledge Graph. So it's not very helpful to look at the project and give one estimate. Ultimately, we had to break that down into multiple parts and provide an estimate per part to kind of understand how long the whole thing would take and see if there's any way, if there are any major parts of the project that would just take too long and don't make sense to invest that much time in. So the example I gave here is only broken down into 4 parts, but in reality, we break this down a lot smaller and provide estimates to each step along the way. And next, we think about how to build iteratively. So again, as Calvin said, sometimes things change. If you start building something and then priorities change or something else happens, you can't necessarily guarantee that you're going to have time to complete, a 6-month or year-long project. So we think it's really important to break down our projects into iterative phases. And that ultimately does help us to test and adapt our designs along the way. It helps us to be less disruptive to customers with our changes. And it also helps us to release parts of our project to the market sooner so that our customers don't have to wait a year to see improvements on things that they've maybe made requests about. So for example, again, in this entity search project, we had laid out a very fancy plan that we wanted to ultimately achieve. And when we looked at it and broke it down into parts and provided estimates to each part, we concluded that it would be too much to kind of take on in one shot and that wouldn't make sense for us as a product org, and it wouldn't make sense for our customers. So we started by eliminating a couple of the not necessary features, as well as reducing one of the steps to kind of cut some of the extra features that we had added to that page to try to get the estimate down a bit. And this allowed us to actually roll out this project in 2 major phases with a couple of follow-on phases in between. And that proved to be really successful for us. And kind of the last step is QAing and fixing bugs. So this is something that we are doing constantly throughout the process. It's a shared effort between product and engineering, and oftentimes other stakeholders that we engage throughout the company. Our goal here is really to test all the use cases that we had laid out in the final spec and to compare the ultimate screens that engineering built to the mocks that we had proposed. We also always confirm that existing customer workflows are intact, because ultimately when we turn this on, we should not be disrupting any existing customer workflows. And one thing that we really like to do is to invite others throughout the company to participate in a bug bash, where we incentivize people to find bugs so that, again, we can try to find and fix all bugs before we even go into our early access period, and definitely before we release product into general availability. So that's kind of all I had to say about the building process. So I will pass it over to Nick.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie, and thank you to Calvin and Max as well. Obviously, there's all this amazing work that comes in from their teams to come up with a product, start building it. So many amazing things that they just went through. And then once they've done all that great stuff, it's up to my team and a couple other marketing arms of the organization to actually push that information out to you all so that you know what's available, what are some of the new features, what's the value of them. And you all are probably aware, if you've worked with Yext, that our release cycle has 3 seasonal releases, and each seasonal release, typically it's spring, summer, and fall, but those might vary. Each seasonal release has early access and general access, and early access will be on that release date. And in this period, you're able to, all those features are public and you're able to turn them on in your account. And from there, it's usually about a month until general access. And at general access, you can actually, or every account is going to have those features turned on for them unless there's some sort of an exception. So there's a 1-month period where you're aware of the features, you know about all the great things that have come out, but you can sort of prepare yourselves to turn them on. You can turn them on as early or late as you'd like to, and then general access, they'll be turned on for everyone. We also, this is more recent, probably about 1.5 years ago, we started doing monthly releases to get you all this great content even sooner. There are some features that throughout this process finish before the seasonal release is ready. So they can be done 1, 2, 3 months before a release is ready. And we've decided that we don't want to wait until these seasonal releases to get you all these amazing features. So we also started to release monthly releases that are exclusive to hitchhikers, people that are in the platform every day. And those releases will get sent out typically every month, where we don't have an early access or general access, but not necessarily every month. And with those, you can request to have those features turned on for the most part. And then finally, release content. This is a big piece of making sure that everyone is aware of all the amazing features that have come out. These are some of the things that my team works on, but you can of course find the complete list of release notes. This is on the right. You can see our release hub on hitchhikers. It's hitchhikers.yext.com. They'll have information on every single release feature. We'll send you out emails. There's blogs, webinars. A bunch of our other content teams are working on things like posts in the community where you can comment on each feature or ask questions about each feature. So there's a lot of great content that comes out of these releases to make sure that all the amazing work our product team is doing and our engineering team is doing is getting out there. I wanted to do one more plug on the Ideas board. Ideas was launched as part of our last release, and this is, as Max mentioned earlier, a great part of our roadmap. We had sort of informally been speaking with customers and getting ideas for features to add, but we wanted to make that something real, something concrete, and sort of scale those efforts to really help you all impact the product roadmap. So what we did was we launched Ideas. It's available for everyone on Hitchhikers now, though it is still in beta. And what you can do is you can submit your own ideas, upvote and comment, and you're interacting directly with the product team. We do have an awesome blog post on how we actually built Ideas, which I highly recommend you check out because it's almost entirely built on Yext using answers, knowledge graph, and pages. We have all of these items as entities in our knowledge graph, so it's really cool. Before we close out the webinar, I want to pop over to an actual demo of the Ideas board. So you can see here, this is what it looks like, just like the screenshot I just had. Like everything else at Yext, we're search first. You can search and find any ideas that you're looking for. But we also have all these great filters on the sides where you can filter down to specific product areas. You can also filter on status. So you can see the statuses here if there's an idea submitted, if you're looking for clarification, under consideration, planned, under development, released, declined. And these statuses are actually controlled by our product team. So Max, Calvin, Jamie, and all of our other product managers are adding these statuses. And one of the cool things that you can do is sort by most relevant, most recent, most upvoted. So you can see our current most upvoted idea here. And like you can see that we've planned to work on outbound links available for welcome pages. You can also sort by your ideas. So unfortunately, I've not submitted any ideas yet, but if I had, you would be able to see those ideas. So you can take a look. If we click in to one of the specific ideas, you can see how many upvotes it has, what comments are on it, and all the great information that the Hitchhiker has plugged in here. So you can see here's one of our product managers commenting directly on the idea itself. If you want to add a new idea, you've got this really cool flow here. So let's say I wanted to add commenting in the knowledge graph. We're first checking for duplicates. So this is using answers as a backend to check and see if there are any similar features in here. It doesn't look like there are, so I'm going to continue on. If there were, of course, I can upvote that idea or comment on it. You can plug in which category. I could put in my business idea, describe the idea, saying I'm working with one of my teams and I want to be able to comment on the knowledge graph to make sure that they're doing XYZ properly. And the current workaround, like for example, my team is using, I don't know, an Excel spreadsheet to use this in the meantime, or we'll use content suggestions to work on these. I'm not going to submit the idea. However, you can see all the great stuff that you can submit those ideas here. So I really enjoy the ideas board. I hope that you all do as well. And I hope to see you all on there and publishing some ideas. Now, before we get to question and answering, and I want to remind you that you can plug any questions into the Q&A feature in Zoom. I just want to quickly talk through what's next and some actions you can take. Obviously, you can visit hitchhikers.yext.com to see a lot of the great content that we talked about. We have all of the release notes for recent releases, the ideas board you can find there as well. You can engage in the community, leave feedback. If there are any other questions, this is probably the fastest way to directly interact with our product team in addition to ideas. And then also just be on the lookout for more upcoming events. We want to host more content like this. There's going to be a survey at the end of this webinar. So if there's anything specific that you're looking for, definitely let us know and we'll try to work that into our schedule. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the product team to talk through some questions and answers.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. So we got a few questions here that I'm going to go through and give some responses to. The first one is, how often is the product managers reviewing the ideas? I would say pretty constantly. So actually internally, we have a Slack channel. So every time a new idea is submitted, it pings a Slack channel and actually tags in the relevant product managers. And they take a look and try to respond as quickly as possible. So we're constantly reviewing those. Anything that's in the idea submitted stage is kind of in that review stage. And my team looks at those and then ultimately will respond and then move it to one of the other statuses. And then as ideas flow through this cycle, we update the status there. So you can actually use that as a kind of a product roadmap if you filter down to just the ideas that are planned or in development. Another question we got is, why do you have monthly and seasonal releases? It's a good question. So we have 3 seasonal releases per year, as Nick mentioned, and we have usually a monthly on every other month. Outside of that, we're trying to find the right middle ground between releasing software as much as possible, but also not disrupting workflows. If software is changing on a daily basis, it can be very disruptive for someone who's trying to use Yext to, I don't know, respond to reviews or manage a knowledge graph. And we like to give customers a heads up before we're changing stuff. That said, we also want to release features as much as possible. We are a SaaS offering, cloud-based. We don't have different versions of our software. Everything is live in the product, and we gate features via feature flags. And we want to get that out in the hands of you as quickly as possible. So this is the balance we found where on the monthly releases, you can opt in if you want. And then the seasonal releases are 3 per year is a pretty good cadence. It also gives us the opportunity 3 times a year to kind of go bigger in terms of marketing and PR and stuff like that. Another question, do you ever solicit customer feedback on new features before releasing? The answer to that is absolutely yes. We solicit customer feedback at all stages of this process, from ideation all the way through to development. This could take the form of reviewing mocks with customers. We sometimes build prototypes and get feedback from them. Our left navigation that we'll be rolling out in the spring, we've been working on for over a year. And we've had, I think, around 20 different customer interviews of people giving us their feedback of all sorts of different use cases on that left navigation. So we try to do this as much as possible as part of our release process. When you're designing products, it's really critical to get customer feedback throughout, because you're generally so in the weeds, and you learn a lot by seeing a new person look at whatever you're designing. We have another question. How do PMs divvy up their time between ideation, prioritization, and building? I'm looking for a rough percentage of each. This is a tough one. It really varies a lot. So we have this release process, and I think part of that is the time spent is a little bit cyclical as well. When you're thinking, we're about to start thinking about our summer release, and most of the product managers have a pretty good idea of what the general ideas are, but over the next month, we're going to be spending a lot more time getting those details really ironed out. So we're kind of overall in terms of percentages, maybe a third, but it really depends, and it depends on the time of year. It depends on what you're focused on. It also depends on which product you're working on. Some products are a lot more mature, and a lot more of the features are more straightforward, and some products are a lot newer, and they're spending a lot more time on the ideation phase. And with more mature products, you're spending a little bit more time on the building phase. But I would say roughly about a third. We got a question around the different statuses inside of the ideas board. There's a few different statuses. I won't go through all of them, but there's 2 statuses that really indicate that something's going to be worked on soon. That is planned and under development. So I would say anything that's planned, we're aiming to do it in the next few releases, often the next release. Anything that is under development is something that we're working on usually in the current release. Sometimes stuff can take 2 releases, so it's not always black and white. But those 2 statuses are stuff that we're really actively working on. For anything that's under consideration, that's more in the ideation phase. And this is something that a PM is looking at as they're going through their backlog and prioritization. Let's see what else. We've question, is the Yext product team hiring? Yes, the Yext product team is hiring. Specifically right now, we have some open heads on our user experience team. So you can find those on our career site. And we're always looking for new product managers. A lot of our team does come from internal transfers at Yext. So we have a lot of a big percentage of our team worked on other teams and then have joined the product team. But our careers page is the best place to see what's available. And we do have open headcount right now, specifically in our user design or product design team. I think that's most of the questions. Nick, any other questions that I'm missing?
No, I think you covered everything. There are a couple here that we can handle one off if we didn't get to yours. But I wanted to thank everyone for joining. I hope that you all found this session valuable and really got to see how our product team works behind the scenes. And if you do have any ideas, absolutely reach out, and you can do that through ideas on Hitchhikers. If you have questions, you can reach out through the community on Hitchhikers, and we look forward to hearing all of the great things that you want us to add to our products and how we can help you build some amazing experiences. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.